Hi, my name's Taylor Miller, and today I'll be giving my TED Talk titled Identity in a Race-Filled World. So I'm going to start with a question. Raise your hand if you've ever felt alone or isolated because you were different from those around you. Okay. I see a lot of hands in the audience, and I can say that I totally relate to. And that's how I felt mostly growing up in my childhood. And the good news is I have a way around that. And I know how to feel less alone and isolated. But before I get there, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I care about it so much and what you can do to get rid of that feeling. So one thing that I care about most is a diverse and equitable world, because where I grew up, I didn't have a lot of that. And I always felt different, and I hated myself for feeling different. And so now you might be asking, well, where did you grow up? I grew up in a place about 30 to 45 minutes outside of Atlanta, Georgia, called Powder Springs, Georgia. When I was born, it was about 13,000 people, 60% which were white and 40% which were non-white. And so you can imagine with some of those statistics, I felt isolated all the time, which is why I always like to tell this story. It was the first day of summer camp and I was 7 years old. I was so nervous because I didn't know anyone there and I just wanted to make a friend. So I go up to this little boy on the swing set and I ask him if he'd like to play with me. And he says no. And when I ask him, well, why don't you want to play with me? He says, I don't want to play with you because I don't like Black people. And looking back on that moment as a 17-year-old, I can't really conceptualize even to this day the amount of hate that came out of a 7-year-old's mouth. But at the time, I did what I knew best. And that was I walked away to the edge of the playground and I played by myself that day. And I consider that moment a turning point in my life to where I started to isolate and look in on myself and doubt myself because I looked different from those around me. I was afraid that if I spoke out of turn or decided to let myself be myself, that people would hate me for it. And so I didn't. And that was most of how elementary school went for me. I didn't speak out of turn. I didn't talk to people besides my parents, maybe my teacher. I did what I needed to do, and I didn't interact with those around me. And then middle school came. I still didn't really know who I was, and I was still ashamed of who I was as a person. My parents saw that, and so they moved me to a different school. The school that I went to was in Atlanta, Georgia. And for reference, Atlanta, Georgia is the biggest city in Georgia with about 500,000 people, 70% which are non-white. And I am eternally grateful for them doing this because when I walked into my middle school for the first time, I was in awe. I had never seen so many people of color before in my lifetime. Not only were they there, I could talk to them and they could relate to me and they could understand what I was going through. And I became great friends with them. But not only did my peers look the same as me, I also had my first Black teacher. And that was one of the first times I had ever seen a positive role model who looked like me. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So I graduate middle school, and understandably, I was a little bit hesitant because I had to go to high school. I was coming to Madeira, and I didn't know if Madeira would be like my elementary school, where I felt alone and isolated, or it would be like my middle school, where I made a lot of good friends. So I was very nervous coming here, but I soon found out that it was nothing at all like my elementary school, and I had created a great community of friends that I still cherish to this day, and they really helped me find who I was. So now that I've kind of talked about my life thus far and how I've got here, I'd like to reflect a little bit about some of the things that I've learned. So the first thing that I learned foremost is that you got to have confidence in yourself, because I didn't have that for me when I was growing up, and that really damaged my self-esteem and my perception of who I was. I remember I was always so embarrassed to have my hair so curly and different from those around me, and I begged my mom to straighten my hair because I didn't want to look different. But as I went into middle school, I metaphorically stepped into my own spotlight and allowed myself to embrace the differences that I had from those around me. The second thing that I learned is that I couldn't do it by myself, which is why I'm so thankful for my friends who are always there for me if I needed to cry, rant, or laugh. And my parents who saw that I was struggling in elementary school and moved my schools to make me feel more comfortable and give me endless advice. One of the things that my dad used to say to me every morning before I went to school is that you're beautiful, you're smart, you work hard and do your best every day, and you have fun. And I still repeat that to myself every day before I go to class. And the last thing that I learned is that you cannot let other people tell you who you can't be before you know yourself. because I let someone do that to me when I was a child, and I lost out on one of the most innocent and carefree moments of my life. And I refuse to let myself feel like that again. So have confidence in yourself and know who you are before you let anyone else tell you who you can or can't become. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the TED Talks for today.